Greetings, Deep Dive Podcast listeners. This is your boy, Sam Orum, coming at you with another episode of the Deep Dive Podcast. How's everybody doing tonight? Hopefully, everybody's having a great night, a great week. I know that there are a lot of things going on around the world, and a lot of people have been chiming in just to get some empowerment, some encouragement, just to bring some excitement into their lives. And so, we're here tonight to bring you just some information, some things that may help empower you as you continue to build, as you continue to grow, as you continue to build a quality of life that so many people so desire. For those of you who I have not had an opportunity to meet through the podcast, welcome. Welcome to the Deep Dive Podcast. It really means a lot to me that you are participating and listening in or watching into the podcast because so many people around the world have been getting so much value from what we're sharing. So I appreciate you logging in. Those of you who have been the loyal supporters of the Deep Dive Podcast, once again, thank you so very much for everything that you do every single week to keep me encouraged, to keep the podcast going, just continues to share. And I'm excited, man. I'm just excited about getting a chance to talk to you a little bit tonight about something that I think everyone at some point in their lives experience. And that is some semblance or some sort of failure. And so my whole thing tonight is to talk to you about how do you come back after a failure. Now I want to have a caveat to this because one of the things that I don't believe in personally is failures. I don't believe in that. I think it's either a success or a learning experience. However, for in the interest of clarity in terms of what it is that we're talking about, and for people who are new in terms of being empowered and growing and things of that nature, um, I'll say failure. But again, understand that I look at failures, and this is just my personal thought, by the way. I look at failures as just another opportunity to grow, not so much as a failure in every sense of that particular word. But realizing I realize this, I'm sure you realize this as well. Coming back after a failure could be challenging. That could be a challenge to a lot of people, but it is a part of your personal growth. How do you develop if you don't have experiences to help you grow? How do you develop if you don't have these things that you have to kind of overcome and mentally or physically sometimes overcome these things? So it's a part of personal growth and achieving success. Basically, in the long run, it's going to help you just to kind of have a better mindset when things don't go right, right? And they'll never go the way we plan it. It never works that way. But what this personal growth does for you after challenges, and I prefer to use the word challenges instead of failures, but uh, if you learn from those things, if you grow from those things, then once you're, posed with a challenge or a quote unquote failure in the future, then you're better suited to actually overcome that, right? One of the things, and if you're taking notes, I want you to jot down a few of these thoughts, but one of the things you want to understand about, coming back after a failure is you just have to accept your feelings a lot of times. And so what do I mean by that, accepting your feelings? Well, we know that it's natural to feel disappointed after a failure, right? It's natural to feel frustrated or even ashamed after a failure, but you just have to acknowledge these things, acknowledge these feelings without judgment. It is what it is. Like my good friend Dr. Trim says, it is what it is and it ain't what it ain't. So you just have to accept these feelings. You have to acknowledge these feelings without judgment. Understand that failure is just a part of life. And it doesn't define your worth. It doesn't define your potential. But what it may define is your level of, the wherewithal you have in terms of overcoming obstacles moving forward. Fight through these things. Fight through these things. Accept the feelings. Accept, yeah, I'm frustrated. Yeah, I'm disappointed. In a lot of cases, yeah, I am ashamed of whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, it's not going to stop me from growing. It's not going to stop me from moving forward. And it certainly doesn't affect my worth. I'm still worthy. So you want to keep that in mind. And then But one of the things you want to do in the process of even accepting your feelings, but you still have to analyze what that failure may have been. Analyze that failure. Take a step back and, objectively assess what went wrong. Why did it fail? Why did I fail? Why did the scenario fail? Situation fail? Objectively assess what went wrong. Then what you want to do is try to identify the specific reasons after you said, okay, this went wrong, but then you want to look at the specific reasons that went wrong. Okay. Now I'm keeping it general because this could be anything through relationships, through your business, through, you're dealing with your kids, what it could be anything. So I want to give a generic notion in terms of just analyzing the specifics of that failure, whatever it may be. It could have been due to, just giving an example, it could have been due to some external factors that you had no control over. You had no control over, right? There are a lot of strikes going on, the actor strikes, the writer strikes, the car UAW and potential government shutdown, all of these things that are going on. Well, these are external factors that can affect what you're doing and quote unquote cause you to fail. Well, it's not your fault. You can't be culpable for a auto strike, right? Not individually or anything. So that's an external factor that you have to take into consideration. Now, will you have personal mistakes? Absolutely. There will be personal mistakes, or it could be a combination of both, some personal mistakes or external factors. But at the end of the day, you want to analyze this. If you analyze this particular analysis can provide a lot of information and insight as you move forward. In other words, it'll tell you, don't do this again. Don't do this again. You touched this hot stove once, you want to analyze why you touched the hot stove and what happened, well, you got burned, right? Well, don't do it again. That's a lesson learned from that particular failure. So you want to make sure you learn from these experiences. I look at it like every failure, it carries a lesson. And I said this, either you're going to, and again, this is my thought, either you're going to learn from it or you're going to grow from it or something to that effect. But at the end of the day, every failure carries a lesson. So what you want to be able to do is use the insight that you gain from that particular, failure, and you're going to learn how to grow from that. That's your objective. Okay, it didn't work. I'm going to learn how to grow from it. Consider what you could have, done differently. What could you have done differently? How could you have maybe, changed this or changed that or done this or done that that may have affected the outcome in a positive way? So how can you apply these to future situations to increase your chances of success? For me, I failed a lot. I failed a lot in so many different areas. But I utilize those failures to, I take each failure, and again, it's hard, it's really hard for this word failure to even come out of my mouth because I don't think like that. But, I know this is not about me, it's a global podcast. But for me, I'm like choking on the word failure because I don't believe in failure, but I'm trying to be, down the middle in terms of my assessment. But for me, I have a lot of, I'll say, challenges, failures, challenges, whatever you want to have, but whatever you want to say. But I kind of, look at these things and like, okay, how can I take that and use it as fuel to be better the next time or to make the companies better or to make myself better, whatever it may be? How do I do that? How do you learn from these particular experiences? What could you have done differently? And what can you apply to future situations to increase your chances of succeeding or not failing, depending upon what that is? One thing that you can do, and I've done this, is to set realistic expectations. Now, again, let me put my caveat here. When I say set realistic expectations, you got to understand from a person like me, my mindset, I believe anything is possible, right? I believe anything is possible. So when I'm talking about setting, realistic expectations, I'm talking about something from a standpoint of, hey, look, I felt like I was going to go outside and lift the car up, just two hands and lift up a car. Oh, that's not a realistic expectation. Even though I believe anything is possible, going outside and picking up a 2-ton car or 2-ton truck or whatever it may be, it's probably not a realistic expectation, right? So, you want to ensure that your goals and your expectations for whatever it may be, they're realistic. They're realistic. Sometimes failure, it happens or occurs because the goals that you're setting were too ambitious or they're too unrealistic given the circumstances that you're, presented with, like lifting up a car with just your bare hands. So sometimes you have to adjust those goals to align with your capabilities. You're not capable, and that's a good word. You want to write that word down. That's a good word to explain what I'm trying to say. You want to align your goals with your capabilities and your available resources. So write that down. Align your goals with your capabilities and your available resources. Because so let's use that car as an analysis. Most people, I don't know of anybody, there may be somebody, I don't know of anyone that's capable of just lifting a car with their bare hands, right? So you have to align your goals with your capabilities. What are you capable of doing? And then you want to also align your goals with your available resources. Like I said earlier, you may want to open up a shoe store, right? But you don't have any money. No one you know have any money, and no one is lending you any money. How are you going to open up the shoe store? So you have to look at your resources as an obstacle in terms of why something may have failed. Experience. Experience is another big deal in terms of, whether or not you fail or don't succeed at a certain thing. Let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a quick story. I had this restaurant back in the day. I'm laughing because all my people that know, they know. But I had this restaurant back in the day. It was called Sam's Country Cooking and More. Sam's Country Cooking and More. It's in Montgomery, Alabama. Those of you in Alabama, it's in Montgomery. It was off of Troy Highway. Anyway, I had Sam's Country Cooking and More. Now, mind you, I didn't know anything about a restaurant. I didn't know anything about the restaurant business. I didn't even know how to cook. But I wanted a restaurant because I just wanted a restaurant, and I wanted a country cooking restaurant. I wanted a soul food restaurant. So I just got to open the restaurant, and man, it was myself, my two sisters, my mom, and a couple other people. And we put that thing together, man. We coming out of the gate. We're gonna serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and oh man, we had all of this stuff. Man, none of us knew what the heck we were doing. We didn't know what we were doing, and cooks were just crazy. I'm sorry if you listen in, cooks. I apologize. It's true, but I apologize for saying it on the air. But it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. And, ultimately, I think I lost about $600,000 in that venture. I can't even remember how long the restaurant was over, but it was a bar on one side and the restaurant on the other side. And, it was cool. We just didn't know what we was doing. And, one day I live in Atlanta and the restaurant was in Alabama. So one day I, I came to the restaurant unbeknownst to everybody. I just showed up. And when I pulled up in front of the restaurant, I saw one of the cooks and one of the dishwashers sitting outside of the restaurant on the hood of a car smoking a Newport. I knew right there, you know what, this thing we about to close right now. We about to close this thing right now. And I made that decision to close that restaurant because it was horrible. It was horrible. And it was all my fault. So why am I sharing that with you? It's because I didn't have the capability to align with my goal. My goal was to own a restaurant. That was the goal. But I didn't have the capability. I didn't know what to do, didn't know what to say, didn't have the right people. I don't think anything went right. right? So you have to understand, you have to set realistic expectations, and most of the time, those realistic expectations are should be in alignment with your capability. Remember, I always talk about building capacity. I'm always going to talk about that because the capacity of who you are is truly who you are. You know, you're not anything different than what your capacity will allow you to be, right? The other thing you want to do is sometimes when you have these failures or things that don't go well, you know, it may be just mentally you want to reframe your perspective. Well, what do I mean by that? Reframing your perspective. Instead of viewing it as a setback, see it as an opportunity. See it as an opportunity for growth, an opportunity to change something, an opportunity to build it better, right? So you're just reframing your perspective. This is to give you some mental clarity on how to move forward. But yeah, you don't have to look at it as a failure. Just look at it as a setback and an opportunity to grow. All of you heard this before, the story about Thomas Edison, who invented the light bulb and all this other kind of stuff. You know, he famously said that I've not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work. If you look at it from that perspective, it's like, man, yeah, I didn't fail. It's just these 10,000 ways didn't work. As you guys, most of you know, I have a company called One Voice Worldwide, and we tell people that when you're dealing and building your business, it's okay to get a no. You know, it's okay to get a no from your business because every no gets you closer and closer to your yes. Life is about balance. Left has a right, up has a down. You know, it's night has a day. You know, there's a balance there, right? So if you continuously get no's, at some point that balance has to kick in where you'll get a yes. Well, this is just understanding how you're reframing your perspective. I don't focus on the no's. I focus on I'm getting rid of the no's so I can get closer to the yes. That was that whole Thomas Edison thought. It wasn't 10,000 ways that didn't fail. It was 10,000 ways that just didn't work. So adopting a positive mindset, it can make it easier for you to bounce back from your perceived failure. Okay. So keep that in mind as you reframe your perspective. And, you know, a lot of times, if it's something, let's say it's something personal that was a failure, it could have been a marriage, it could have been whatever it was, but it was deeper than business or deeper than just, oh, I failed to do this. It could be something that may have been a bit more catastrophic in your life. In these cases, a lot of times you want to kind of seek support, seek support as well. Don't be afraid to learn from your support network. Now, if you got people who you rely on for support, for encouragement, people who are not going to take your failure and try to, bask in the glory of failure. You know, y'all, there's some people out there that's like that, right? They love to see other people fail. They love to see other people fail. That's just like crazy. That's crazy to me. But there are people who are out there like that. But when you have these situations and they're serious situations, go ahead and seek support from people that you trust. There are a handful of people that I trust intimately with everything, my conversations, and I can talk to about anything because in my position, in a lot of cases, I'm the motivator, right? But who motivates the motivator? Who motivates the motivator? Well, I have a support system of a handful of people. I say a handful because I can count them on one hand that, you can rely on to as that support system. Share your feelings and share your experiences with those individuals. Not everybody, let me say this again, not everybody. You cannot trust your failures with everybody. Because unbeknownst to you, in a lot of cases, your failures become fuel for other people, typically known as haters. Okay, typically known as haters. So you don't have to go blabbering out everything to everybody. I don't believe in that at all. But you do want to talk to people who are your mentors or who are your support system or people who you can trust intimately with your conversation, and they will not take that conversation beyond the two of you. That's another big thing. They can support you, but then if they're gonna go flapping their gums, that's want that. I've had secrets for many, many years from people that have shared stuff with me for many, many years that unless they say different, I'll take them to my grave. I'll take them to my grave. This is funny. I'm laughing because my mom made her soul rest. She always used to try to pick me for information, right? Because I have a lot of information for a lot of stuff, and I'll come and I'm talking to her. She say, "Well," and she was trying, kind of be trying to trying to be a little slick about it. She was like, "Well, I ain't heard too much about from so and so lately. You heard from so and so? Now I might have just been talking to so and so. No, I ain't heard from because I know she picking me for information. She picking me for information. But unless so and so tell me to say something, it's going to my grave. And y'all know how I feel about my mama, right? I ain't telling you no nosy. Yeah, she was nosy. Yeah, she was nosy. And so but now also now the other side, she was one of those people, one of my confidants that I can tell anything to. I can be most vulnerable with, and there was no judgment. There was always just advice, sometimes from afar, sometimes close up advice, but there was always advice. One thing that I loved and admired about my mom is, growing up, she was like, son, you can do what you want to do. You can do, I've said this in a podcast before, you can do whatever you want to do. Uh, I trust your judgment. I trust your judgment. I'm talking about from a kid. She's like, I trust your judgment. I'm like, okay, I can do whatever I want to do. I can stay out all night. I can party. I can drink. I can do. She said I can do whatever I want to do. But that wasn't the end of the sentence. At the end of the sentence, she's at the end of the statement. She's like, you can do whatever you want to do. I trust your judgment. However, if you do something you're not supposed to do, don't call me. You get locked up, you better call somebody. Don't call me. Don't call me. You get hurt doing this, don't call me. I trust your judgment. You can do what you want to do, but you act a fool if you want to. Don't call me. I'm like, man, she just took all the fun out of the first part of the statement. Now it's like, okay, you can do anything you want to do, but you go get locked up. Don't call her. Oh man, So you need that person that is your true support system that can help you through these failures, help you through uh, difficult times. It's I've been planning this whole mental health podcast that I want to do with a group of men, black men in particular, because black men they don't like to share. They don't like to share their intimate feelings or thoughts or failures. Uh, They don't like to say, I love you. They don't like to say, I'm hurting. They don't like to say all of these things because we're taught from birth that you got to be strong. You can't cry and you can't be vulnerable and all of these things. I'm kind of, old school man's man. You hit me in my face, I'm gonna hit you in the back of the head with a brick. I'm that kind of dude, right? Well, I was. But what I'm starting to learn, guys, is mental health is a thing. Mental health is a thing. Excuse me. And if we don't have that person or person that we can be vulnerable with in terms of sharing failures or whatever it may be, I'm telling you this unequivocally, it will affect your mental health. It will affect your ability to function at the highest level. That's not to say you can't function. It will affect your ability to function at the highest level. So, black men, get your mentors, get you people that you trust. Trust the fact that, God put these people in your life for a particular reason, right? And if you have failures, you have setbacks, seek that support. Don't be afraid to seek that support. Don't be afraid. Sometimes it's just a conversation, just to talk about it, just to get it off your chest. All right, that's cool. But talking to other people that provide that emotional support, or even a fresh perspective. Because I'll be one of the first people to tell you, like, if you come to me with a situation, I'm a solution oriented kind of guy. So I'm always looking for the solution. Okay, here, that's the problem. So what's the solution? Right? And I'm going to start that conversation out by saying, wonder if, wonder if. I got that from one of my mentors, a guy by the name of Montreal Jackson. And we always talk about business and different things. And he would start a conversation off by saying, well, wonder if. And then he would go into the soliloquy. And I'm like, okay. And I'm the same way now. It's like, wonder if we did this or said this. In other words, seek solutions through these failures. And a lot of times those solutions come from your support system. But then you got to take action. Analyzing your failures, that's great. Learning from it, that's great. But you got to take deliberate steps to actually move towards your goal, resolve that issue, and move towards your goal. Avoid dwelling on the past mistake because it ain't going to help anyway, other than you've learned from that. Now you've learned from it, you can move on. Don't dwell on it after you've learned from it. Move on. You don't want to get stuck in a cycle of self-pity. Self-pity is a destruction of yourself. That's what self-pity is. I'm telling you that. Self-pity is the destruction of your cells, which means is starting to destroy you. When I'm talking about cells, cells, it is self-pity destroys the cells in your body. And that's the beginning of the destruction of you. So you want to take action to move forward and make improvements, but don't wallow in misery, don't wallow in pities. What is the solution? How do I move forward? Okay. And then celebrate the wins, the small wins. Yeah, you had the failures, but celebrate the wins. So what went well? Yeah, you may not, have my restaurant may not have been the multi-million-dollar deal that I thought it would be. But I met some great people, and that's probably all I can say about it. But celebrate the wins. Celebrate the wins. As you work towards your goals, celebrate the achievements. Even if there was failures along the way, celebrate the achievements, no matter how small they may seem. Celebrate. The small victory is what tends to happen with that. It can kind of boost your confidence. It also boosts your motivation. So celebrate those small things, but you got to stay persistent in doing that. Just keep pounding at your goals. Keep pounding at your vision. Keep pounding at your purpose. Stay persistent. Understand that success often requires you to just be persistent. Just stay in the game. Just stay in the game. A lot of successful people, and you may have heard me say this. I actually wrote it in my book, The Mindset of a Champion, but Mindset of a Champion. But many successful people, they face multiple failures before they reach their goal, right? But the key is to stay persistent, keep grinding and beating and pounding and pummeling away at that particular goal. Got to stay persistent, keep pushing forward. Don't allow your setbacks to deter you from your long-term objectives. In a lot of cases, believe it or not, this is deep. Believe it or not, sometimes the setbacks they're a part of the process. They're a part of actually getting to where you want to be. I've shared this analogy before, but if there's an airplane that they take off from Atlanta and the goal is to leave Atlanta and to fly to Houston, Texas, for example, right? And they take that flight, 70% of the time that flight is off course. A lot of people don't know that. It's continuously adjusting in the air. 70% of the time is off course. Those are small defeats. Those are things that didn't go well, right? But typically, most of the time, 99.9% of the time, the flight lands where it's supposed to land, when it's supposed to land. Your life, your dreams, your goals, they're pretty much the same. You want to be able to, go through the adjustments. The 70% may be off course, your business plan may be off course, your marriage may be off course, your friendships may be off course. But at the end of the day, if you stay persistent, if you continue to persevere, if you have long-term objectives as opposed to wallowing into the short-term challenges, well, you and your spouse arguing about what's for dinner. Well, that's not long-term, that's just tonight. We're arguing about what's for dinner, right? Stay persistent in your long-term vision and your long-term goal. Actively seek feedback from people that you trust. Now, we talked about people that you trust from a personal standpoint, but now I'm talking about people from a professional standpoint. Let's say you had a business failure, something of that nature. Seek advice or information from trusted sources in business or your mentors. I believe everybody should have a mentor. I believe that strongly. I've had multiple mentors throughout my life. They've all served different purposes, but they also have shaped me into the person that I am. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. But I think I would be much less than whatever I am today were it not for my mentors. So I do believe in that wholeheartedly. A lot of times that feedback comes from those mentors. Just keep pushing forward. Don't let these setbacks mess you up. This feedback from your mentors or from business people or people who know. This is why I have so much respect for old people. And I say old people, I'm talking about in terms of life's experiences, right? I have so much respect. You know, people come to me a lot for a lot of things. I mentor a lot of people. You guys know this, executive life coach, all that stuff. So people come to me a lot. However, when I'm in the presence of my elders, when I'm in the presence of people who know things that I don't know just because they live, there's no substitute for these years, guys. There's no substitute. I shut my mouth, man. There ain't nothing I can say to my elders. I mean, all this stuff I learned and the book stuff and the executive coach, all that stuff, that don't matter to those elders because there are no substitute for those years. So as much as I'm deemed, an expert in certain areas, man, when it comes to my elders, I zip it. I zip it. I just have to listen. There is no substitute for those years, man. I can't say that enough. There's no substitute. I cherish the mindset of the elderly because you can't teach wisdom that was birthed from years. I don't care what you do, you can't do it. You cannot teach the wisdom. The only way you understand what this elderly person is talking about is to become that elderly person. You can't say what it's like to have lived, 80 years doing this if you're not 80 years old. It may not be coming out of my mouth, right? But you understand what I'm saying, right? There's no substitute for that. And I love, I said this before, I love kids and I love the elderly. It's them folks in the middle that get on my nerves sometimes. But anyway, mentors seek feedback from mentors, people who have that wisdom and people who mean you well. All right. And last but not least, as we close out, just remember your why. Why are you doing what it is that you're doing? And that'll give you the ability to kind of fight through, even through failures. Why are you doing this? I've shared this, but when I got involved in business, post education, when I got involved in business, my why was to retire my mom from her job. Her health had started to deteriorate in terms of working at this job for so many years, and the body starts to break down as you get older. You understand how that works. And my why was to retire my mom from that job. And I ultimately was able to do that, right? But during the process, because my why was to retire my mom, when people told me no, I didn't care what they say. When people call me crazy, I didn't care what they say. When people say, fool, why you doing this and don't do that, and not doing that, I didn't care what they said. I needed to retire my mom. See, people are going to give you all this kind of advice, right? And when it's time to write the check, I use writing the check as an analogy for doing something. Not literally writing the check, but as an analogy for doing something. When it's time for them to write that check or to do something, that's when they go MIA, right? It's like, oh, now you can't. They got all of this advice, but when it's time to, for them to do something, it's like, oh, I got to go to work, or oh, I don't have any money, or oh, this, or oh, that, all of these other things. That's why I don't fool with those people. That's why you got to keep that circle that I talked about earlier, those people who you confide in. and you seek support from, you keep that circle small. And all these other cats, when it's time to write that check, they're going to disappear. But for you internally, if you just remember your why, that is self motivation that's greater than your failures. So I didn't care about people telling me no. I needed to retire my mom. I didn't care about people saying, fool, you're crazy. I needed to retire my mom. I didn't care about anybody else's situation or scenario, advice, opinions, any of that stuff at that time. I was laser focused on retiring my mom. And then on April 7th at high noon of that particular year, I decided to, go to her job. I had the limousine, my friends, the red carpet, my sisters, stepdad, everybody. We rolled that red carpet out in front of that job. We went in that job. We pulled my mom out of that job, and she never worked another day for anybody else other than herself the rest of her life. Why is that important? Because had I listened to these fools that tried to tell me, well, you don't need to do this, you need to do that. Well, you don't need to do this, you need to do that. How you gonna tell me what I need to do in my life? You better get on somewhere. I better end this podcast because I'm starting to feel my temperature rise. And these days I'm trying to become a calmer, better version of myself. So I'm going to end this podcast now before I say something that I swore I wouldn't be saying no more. I'm here by myself, cracking myself up. Y'all have to forgive me. I'm cracking myself up. But so yeah, let me end this podcast right now because I'm starting to feel that temperature rising. And I don't want to say nothing I ain't supposed to say. So hey, look, guys, thank you so much for joining me on this particular episode of the Deep Dive Podcast. I really appreciate it. And again, I know I sound redundant every week, but it's important for you to know I do appreciate the support. I heard a young lady by the name of Linda Johnson. She's one of the leaders of the company, One Voice, and I heard her say this past week that she went back and listened to the Deep Dive Podcast. I think I don't even remember the topic last week. I talked about Let It Go, and she listened to that episode and she took some notes. That really touched me because it's important for us to know that people are getting knowledge out of what we do with these podcasts, whether it's the Buzz, which is an incredible talk show with Karen Pamela, whether it's Change Your Faces Ministry with Pastor Jeff Landrum, whether it's Let's Talk with Stanley Doucette, any of these other podcast services, businesses, we do a lot of work. And so for you guys to support that means a lot to us. So thank you very much. Continue to do so. Like, subscribe, download, and share. Go to the website, the Deep Dive Podcast.live, and listen to some of those previous episodes. Listen to last week's episode, Let It Go. Listen to one of the featured episodes called Building Capacity. It all ties in to who you are and whose you are. All right. God bless each and every one of you, and I'll see you on the beaches of the world.